Dan, I got to tell you what, I think the Hounds podcast has elevated itself. It's turned a corner.
Oh, well, really nice.
I think it has. I was re-listening to our episode last week where we interviewed Professor John Pastor and his newly published book about the white pine. And I mean, that was a great episode.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I think it was well received because it's one of the highest listened to and downloaded episodes we've had.
That is really cool to hear. And I think there's still a lot about the book and the white pine I think that you and me could probably still talk about. But if I can be selfish here for a second, the fact that a real live and in-person author found us credible enough to sit down with us and discuss a book that he had written. It took him 2 years to write it. I think that, didn't he say 2 years?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, I just think that puts us, the Woodhounds podcast. I mean, it gives us legitimacy. We're not just two guys that are just babbling
Well,
incoherently about our hobbies.
well, we might still be that on occasion, but yes, I agree that having a guest like John on to talk about his book, it was both interesting, I think, for our audience, but then just on a personal level, again, not to be selfish like you were saying, but I just really enjoyed sitting here talking with him.
And then Dan, I was laughing because you had said about the episode you had learned a new word, and I just thought it was funny because I was like, well, what the heck was it? Was it about ecology or fascicle? I think he used the word about the leaves. And you said, no, the word emeritus.
Yes,
Yeah, John,
the
John
title.
Pastor, yeah, Professor Emeritus, which means he's retired.
Yeah.
Yeah, but John, it was kind of funny. He says, well, but when you're an emeritus, you have to apply for that, and it gets you a free parking spot.
Yeah, I had no idea. I don't even know if I'd ever heard that word before. So, yes,
Yeah,
big takeaways.
yeah, and I thought what it spoke um, a lot to me was, here's a guy who's retired. He's on the tail end of his career, but he's still passionate, and he's
Yeah.
he's publishing books about the things that he finds passionate, that what he wakes up for in the morning. And then when you heard him telling the stories of what the white pine meant to him personally, from his childhood through his relationship with his dad and his brother, that was that was intense. I really
Yes.
like that.
Yeah, and I can appreciate just the fact, like you had mentioned, how he studied, he researched, he worked on this book for 2 years. Just the time putting in. I don't know. For me, that's a long time. I'm struggle to work on something for a day.
Like a certain carport that you're building in
Yes.
your backyard, huh?
Yeah.
Are you saying that you wouldn't take 2 years of research before you sit down at your desk and start typing it out?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
You've
I
been
would
into
just.
it a few days and now you're worn out, right?
I think I would just get distracted, or move on to something else, or I'd get sidetracked. But just having that focus and dedication to put into a book about just a single tree, just one
Yeah.
tree, the white pine.
And he's retired.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if the word retirement means anything to me yet, but I I had spent some time in the scholarly environment in graduate school, and I've rubbed elbows with some professors that I worked for and all, and I just know how hard they work, and they are just deep into their subject matter. It's just what their life passion, and they're very well read and everything. And you think that there comes a time and a place where you say, okay, I'm going to go to the beach. But
Yeah.
here's this guy, he's still walking through the woods. He's finding inspiration. He's studying. And then, I read the book, and it's not just about the ecology. and how it grows and how it supports ecosystems, or what he was calling a foundational American tree. But I mean, he gets into the history, talking about the Revolution and Bunker Hill. I never knew about the New England flag that was at Bunker Hill. It was a flag with a white pine on it.
Yeah. And just the use of it, like I never thought or knew that they would be used for like the ship's masts, like for sailing for uh, navies and battleships and all that stuff. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I knew it
That
was
was
wood,
fascinating.
but not white
That,
pine.
yeah, when I read about the Cornwallis's surrender at Yorktown, that, when you think of all of the circumstances and happenstance that goes into a battle, or a battle of a war, and here it came down to the colonists, from securing the white pine from the king and the British Navy, that it came down to the the British not being able to update or replace worn out masts on their warships,
Yeah.
where they were coming to bail out Cornwallis, who was painted into a corner at Yorktown. All of the British ships, their masts snapped on them because they were old and brittle.
And they had
They,
they had no new ones to replace it because they
yeah,
had no
because we
white
had them all.
pine. We had them all.
But I'm serious. Had these ships been able to get there, they would have probably gotten there ahead of the French Navy, or everything could have just been different.
Yeah,
That
totally.
could have been just enough to get Cornwallis bailed out. But here we
Yep.
are.
Yeah, here
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah. So the book, if you're listening to this podcast, guys, this book is written by Professor John Pastor, and we'll put all of the information in the episode notes down below. The name of the book is called White Pine: The Natural and Human History of a Foundational American Tree. And it's published by Island Press. And I think John had said that if you are interested in purchasing the book, you can go to the Island Press website, and I think there's a discount on
Yep.
it. Yeah. Dan, the other thing that I found interesting was I didn't realize how prevalent the white pine is in your neck of the woods.
Oh
I
yeah.
was interested to hear how you talked about it. I mean, you know a lot already.
Well, that was where I was interested in hearing about the foundations it had on in the effects on like the forest itself. But yeah, where I grew up here, and where I'm from, Eau Claire, like the nickname this city has is a sawdust city because
Yeah.
it was built around sawmills milling up white pines and sending all the lumber down to Missouri that then went out west. So like all of the movement, the expansion of everyone moving across the country, a lot of the stuff was built with white pine, and the white pine came out of the Northwoods. And Eau Claire is situated on a the river that runs down, and that's how they would deliver the logs and the lumber.
Yeah. Wasn't that shocking to hear too? Because when I think of the white pine, I think of Maine. And that and that Professor Pastor said that the the Chippewa, and what's the other river, that the other valley up
The St.
in your
Croix.
neck?
Yep.
Yeah, that those two valleys produced 7 times more board feet of lumber than the entire state of Maine.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing, and that's like I had never thought of white pine out in Maine. I have only thought of it as here in what we call the Northwoods of Wisconsin and Michigan,
Hmm.
and just unbelievable amounts of lumber, board feet of lumber came out of Eau Claire here.
Yeah, I was real serious about the effect that the book had on me and exposing me to the white pine, because I know what the tree is. I have them in my on my land here, and I remember when I first started developing an interest in trees, I was looking at it because the white pine doesn't have those needle kind of, where you can like pierce your skin with them.
Yep.
They're kind of floppy. And I remember Googling it to see what the heck kind of a pine this is, and I was like, oh, they're white pine. So I have two in my front yard, but I know I got more in the back that I don't really see a lot of. But these two that sit out front, we drive by them all the time, and I just see it now differently because when I think of trees, you know, I don't know if this is like harsh to say, but I just kind of lump all of the pines in together. It doesn't matter if it's spruce or
Yep.
it's just pine. Probably because I'm a firewooder,
Yeah.
and when I think of trees, I'm thinking of the big four: oak, ash, cherry, maple, and then there's elm,
Yeah,
locust,
you're not looking
beech.
at it from the point of like lumber and building things. You're looking at it as what burns the best. And pine is definitely not something you probably want to burn for heat.
Yeah, I remember my last tangle with pine firewood. It was a neighbor from my dad's old neighborhood. He knew I was into firewood and he called me up, and he's a very nice man, elderly guy. And he says, "Hey, we cut down a tree. You want to come get the wood?" And just because he's a friend, the answer is yes. So I drove out there, and it's pine, you know,
Oh.
and I'm serious. Yeah, I had to throw my gloves away when I was done loading it into my truck. It's just a mess.
Yep.
And I don't know what it is with pine too, but I've never found pine to split easy. It's kind of a wood that would swallow your wedge sometimes. It
Well,
just
yeah, there's like, and that's where I've actually split up quite a bit of white pine. And if you split between the sections where there's branches, like the branch unions, so like,
uh-huh.
you kind of have these rings where like you'll go up a tree and then the branches will all go out, and then you go another maybe foot or two and there's another group of
Sure.
branches. So what I do is I cut in between those sections, and then that wood just splits super easy, super clean.
Huh.
But if you get by those knots where the branches are, and yeah, you have some tough splitting wood.
Yeah.
Very, very knotty.
Now, my parents are from West Virginia, and when we go down there, there's this one area. It's near the snowshoe ski resort. It's called Spruce, and the Cass Railroad, where it was an old logging town, and they had logged out all of the, mostly the spruce trees out of there. And that's what I think of when I think of pine. I think of those jabby needle kind of
Oh,
trees
yeah.
that you could
Yep.
probably like sew needle and thread with them because they're so uh, violently sharp. But the white pine, I was interested when I saw that I had a white pine on my land, and then when I stumbled upon this book, I was just blown away.
Yeah.
If anyone out there, if you guys find any of this remotely interesting, I think this might be the book for you because it has everything in it. If you're interested in science, with the role that it plays in the forest and the water, the water table, or what was it, the rivers, how it
Yep.
had an effect on the rivers when it was harvested out, or if you have just an interesting look at history in American history, the formation of the country, I think this might be the book for you.
Yeah. It it sounds. I haven't read it, but just talking with John, it sounds like it would definitely be interesting to go through. And that's one of the things. Like my neighbors up here, they have uh, down their driveway, they have white pine, and they're huge. I mean, huge trees.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, you're like, oh, geez, I wonder how that tree, has made it this long. And, way back when all the logging was happening, like that tree probably wasn't even planted yet or even hadn't started growing. And then the logging stopped around here. And that gave those trees, the second growth or whatever they call it sometimes when
Yeah.
forests have been logged. But yeah, we have white pines up here that are 100 feet tall and, 3, 4 feet diameters. They're just huge and just massive, massive tree.
Yeah. It was also interesting to hear him talk about forest management and the problems. It's just not something that you can just do because it has to be focused on the economics of it because you have to pay people to do it.
Yep.
and you don't make your money for a long time. And that made me think of that too, because I was in Finland where their forests are largely managed, where I think in Finland, you can't just go cut down trees and harvest them. You have to develop and execute a plan to replant, to reforest. And then over there, I know they even have machines that plant saplings, but the forests are just gorgeous because all the trees are kind of like in straight rows, and the way they have them spaced optimally so that they grow straight and tall. And I don't know if that day will ever come here in the States where it's a legitimate focus, instead of just a quilt work of some people that do and some people that don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that all of that, I just find all that interesting. The other irony is here we are firewooders, and it firewood in an ironic way has made me appreciate trees in a way that I never did before. I think you see that with hunters where they develop this appreciation of deer or whatever their game
Yep,
is,
totally. Yeah.
where they do take an interest in developing their hobby through conservation.
Yep.
So yeah, all of that was just interest. I'm glad that we were able to talk about this after this interview. We did the same thing when Harry Watt was on. We we spent an episode reflecting on our lessons of the day.
Yeah, and I think the part of that, like the forest management part that was interesting is I think the white pine doesn't grow as fast as like red pine or yellow pine, and I think that's where the white pine is kind of getting, pushed to the back as far as what types of trees they want to have in the forest when they do a managed forest. And so that's another interesting aspect of it is, here you have this great iconic tree, but now because it doesn't grow fast enough to keep up with, managing forest and getting the economical value out of it, it's kind of like
Yeah,
put on the back burner and not, not put in the place that it should be where it's an iconic tree of, history of the country.
yeah, and it definitely reflected his upbringing and his life, because he said even when he lived in New Jersey, his he lived in northern New Jersey, which was still on the southern border of the North Woods,
Yeah. And his
and then
dad
certainly
built
where
built the house
yeah
with white pine, built the furniture with white pine, put the siding with white pine.
yeah
Everything that was his in his
his
upbringing was
bed,
white
yeah.
pine.
Uh-huh. And that's one of those childhood things too, where you just smell something
Yeah.
and it takes you back. Like I was at um my niece's house. Her daughter has her crayons out, and I just get a whiff of crayons and I'm back in kindergarten. Just from smelling something like that. It's amazing the role that your your sense of smell has.
Your flashbacks to getting cracked on the head by a ruler from the teacher.
Yeah, well, I was a bad kid in school. I refused to go out to recess. I would tell the teacher, I say, "Look, I don't play."
Oh my. Oh my.
Da-doonch. Yeah, rim shot. Yeah. So Dan, I just thought that I I just had a blast, and I'm just proud of the Woodhounds podcast, and I'm proud to be associated with you, and that this brand here is allowing us to cross paths with some very interesting people, important
Yeah.
people.
Well, I am glad that you read books because without you having read this book, we would have never gone down this path of, reaching out to the author and getting him on the show here. And so Joe, thank you for being literate
Yes. Well, thank
in
you.
readings. It's crazy how all these things come together. Just,
Yeah, that's what I've always been, a person who reads books. So I've noticed as I've gotten older, my retention isn't as good as it has. Like some of the books that I read when I was younger, I still just have characters and personalities and famous quotes locked into my brain just because of maybe the how old I was when I read it. But now when you get older, I don't know. My retention isn't as good as it used to be. I can talk
Hmm.
to you about Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, and Elmer Gantry was drunk the first sentence of one of my favorite novels, Elmer Gantry. uh, but I don't know. A lot of the books that I've read since then, I don't have as much recollection of them. I got to go back and revisit them. But I don't know. The White Pine. There's some certain sections on here that are burned into my brain, like
Nice.
Yorktown. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was great.
Well, yeah, because
That was
you're
great.
you're a big history buff too, so that's kind of
Yeah, and
melted
I think
together.
there is something about history. There's always the dates and the facts and stuff, but then when you see history from a different vantage point, like we all know about Cornwallis and Yorktown and General Washington, but did we know about the role that the White Pine played? I just find
Yeah.
that fascinating, and it just enriches your appreciation of it.
Right. Yep.
Uh huh.
Yeah. That's one of the things that like you had mentioned, you never would have thought maybe something like that played a role in
Yeah.
impacting how things turned out.
Before the Boston Tea Party, there was the White Pine riots.
Yeah.
It was the precursor to the big show, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Dan, I didn't want to take up a lot of your time. I saw that you've been icing down your elbow and your wrist from driving all of those self-tapping screws.
Yeah, we'll have to
And
maybe talk about that on an upcoming episode. The Versatube carport.
I'm just dying to hear about this.
I'm actually very impressed. It's really been something that I had kind of my doubts and how easy it would be, but it's
Uh-huh.
it's pretty easy.
You think it is?
And it's just the way things are engineered, like everything slides together, and then the brackets you need to put on can only kind of go in certain spots, so there's not a lot of measuring,
Uh-huh.
but you do have to drive in a lot of screws.
And that's where all the work is, huh?
Yeah, just the work and the time it takes.
Uh-huh.
I
I
mean,
think they look cool, but I don't know if I would have the like, am I going to sit down and write a novel after researching it for 2 years? Probably not. Can I have a Versatube carport built in a
weekend.
weekend? Is that realistic?
Well,
By
it
yourself?
is, but it just depends on how hard you want to,
Uh,
how hard you want to push yourself.
your mind says the heck with it before your body does.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I
I
mean,
know I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, I was going at a nice easy pace. I wasn't pushing myself, but it did get to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, how many more of these screws do I got to drive in?
Yeah.
And I still have more to do. I still have a bunch more to do.
So did all those screws come in this gigantic bag?
No, so that's the other fun part. They come in bags of I think like 50, maybe a
Uh-huh.
little more. So like, yeah,
You should have weighed how much weight there is just in the screws.
all of a sudden you're like halfway through putting in what you need for the one section. You got to go open another little bag, and then all of a sudden that bag. Then you got to go get another bag, and it's just oh.
Oh my gosh.
But like I said, I am still. I'm not. I'm saying I'm impressed with how easy it is, how structurally sound it seems. I mean, it's a heck of a building.
That's great. And it's made in Memphis, Tennessee, where I used to live.
Yeah, and the cost was not bad. So yeah, we'll have to discuss that all on another
Yeah,
episode.
let's
Yeah.
table this discussion
Yes.
until we get this done. And
Yeah.
then you can tell me if you would do it again.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to be getting at there. Would you do this again if you came down for a weekend for a second open house at the Ohio Woodburner Yard?
The second time you do something, you're always a lot better at it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, if we did get together down at your place and you had it, we could get it done in a weekend, no problem.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll bring my lawn chair and my umbrella.
And some water.
Yeah.
not somewhat. Just bring a water. How about a water?
How about- no, I'm good. Thanks. So, oh gosh.
All right. Well,
All
everyone,
right.
thanks for tuning in. And yeah, like I said, the numbers were up on that White Pine episode. So if you haven't listened to it, go back through the playlist and check that one out on any and all podcasting platforms.
Well, Dan, how about let's strike up the band? Can you do that?
Yes, we can. The band is striking. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll see you right back here next week on the number one firewood podcast in the world.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Thanks, everyone, for making the Woodhounds the number one firewood podcast in the world. And we want to wish, and we want to tell everyone to be
cool
and stay
fun
and read
a book
and have
a great day.